What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, we're going to be performing a deep dive on the Lake Trio. And these Pokemon are coming back into Pokemon Go, and the cool thing that's happening with this is that we do officially have their shiny variants being made available in Pokemon Go. Plus, with the addition of remote raiding, we can of course raid from around the world and get these regional exclusive legendaries. And of course, people are going to now officially have the question, which version is the best and what's going to be the best from the raid side? What about PvP? So in today's episode, we're going to be taking a look more specifically at Azelf, Mesprit, and Uxie from both of those perspectives and deciding whether or not these Pokemon are worth investing into and how exactly you should end up using them. But anyways, if you do enjoy the deep dive series and you do find it helpful, make sure to turn that like button shiny and of course subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So the first thing that we're going to do is dive into the actual stats of these Pokemon, move on to the moveset, and then finally get applied where we talk about the raid side as well as PvP. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I think this is going to be the most helpful to kind of see them side by side. But if you want the cliff notes of all three of these Pokemon stat-wise, you have Azelf here in the first position, which is the most attack heavy out of the three. And then on the flip side of this, you have Uxie, which is the most defensive heavy out of the three. And then finally, Mesprit sits somewhere in the middle, where it is the most well-rounded option out of all three of these Pokemon. So let's go and talk about Azelf first. Its best stat ends up being its attack stat, ranked at 61st in Pokemon Go, with a literal attack stat of 270. So that's going to be 30 behind Mewtwo, just to give a little bit of comparison. It ends up having the highest CP out of these three Psychic-type Pokemon, with a level 51 CP Buddy Boost of 3,673. Mesprit is somewhere in the middle, but its best stat ends up being its defense stat. It's just not as defensive as Uxie is, but it has a defense stat that's ranked at 96 with a defense stat of 212, and then its attack stat and stamina stat are ranked similarly right around the 200th rank. And as we can see, the attack stat ends up dropping down to 212 as compared to Azelf, which has a 270. So basically, Mesprit's in a weird spot where it is very well rounded, but because it's not dominant necessarily on that attack side, it ends up getting limited in its overall uses. But of course, it could end up opening up on the PvP side, but we're going to have to take a look at the movesets as well. And then finally, we have Uxie, which has a defense stat of 270 that's ranked at 20th in Pokemon Go. But the stamina stat is a little bit of a red flag here, so it does make it a little less tanky. And then finally, the attack stat is ranked so badly at 476. That is a literal attack stat of 156. That's half of Mewtwo's. That is just crazy to kind of put that into the perspective. So speaking of perspective, let's go ahead and take a look at these Pokemon relative to Psychic-type Pokemon. So out of 95 Psychic-type Pokemon, we end up seeing that Mesprit has the best overall stat ranking, where it ends up being ranked at 22nd. And then we've got Uxie ranked at 33rd, and then finally we have Azelf at 36. But this is something very important to kind of point out here. The way that I do this as far as the overall stat ranking is concerned is I do it equally weighted. And the reason for that is because you have attack stat being important in something like raids, but not necessarily as important in PvP. So it would be very difficult for me to know exactly how important attack is versus other stats. So I just do them equally weighted, and we end up interpreting them once we get into the actual use of these Pokemon. But I at least wanted to explain that. So yes, Azelf has the lowest rank, but that's because it's not the most well-rounded, but it does have a high attack stat, which means it could end up being useful from the raid side, but most likely not going to be useful on the PvP side due to its stat distribution. So let's go and dive into the moveset. Something kind of cool going on with these moves is it's going to be relatively simple to remember them because they have so much in common. So they have two charge moves in common with Swift and Future Sight, and then they all have the exact same fast moves of Confusion and then finally Extra Sensory. And because it's consistent across all three, you don't have to worry about that. The only thing that differs between the three, besides their stats, is the final move, which is Fire Blast for the Pokemon Azelf, and then Blizzard for Mesprit, and then finally it's Thunder for Uxie here. And that's going to be the main differentiation. So of course that's not going to matter too much when we're talking about it from the raid side, but on PvP it could end up making a little bit of a difference. So let's go ahead and take a look at that actually. and we're going to dive into the actual raid side first, just because predominantly most of the audience is from the raid side. So we're going to go up against the Arceus that is a pure poison type Pokemon. That way we can take a look at the top psychic type options, and including the legendaries, shadows, the mega Pokemon, whatever, we can see that Azelf ends up doing pretty good ranked at that 15th position. And unfortunately, Mesprit isn't able to make it into the top 30. And then also Uxie, nowhere close to making it into the top 30. With an attack stat of 156, that's extremely difficult to do. But Azelf does make it in here. Now, like I said before, Future Sight is not the most ideal move that you can have from the Psychic typing. For example, you have Psy Strike, you also have the move Psychic, and then you've got something like Future Sight. So if in the future Azelf gets some sort of upgrade, I think it could compete a little bit better. But considering all of that, Azelf is the most useful from the raid side. But even considering that, you do have some more budget options that are able to outperform it. So I don't think Azelf is the best use of your resources, especially competing against something like a Mewtwo. So I think Azelf, despite the fact that it is the #1 option from the raid side compared to the Lake Trio, I don't think it's necessarily the best investment, and I don't want to give it a seal of approval there. So what about PvP? I ended up seeing that the best ranking that we have is actually in the Ultra League, but we are going to have to go down all the way to the 171st ranking to finally see the first Pokemon, Uxie. So Uxie in this particular case is going to range quite a bit, but you would have to have it in the XL range at level 46 to be able to get the most ideal set of IVs. So that is a huge investment. And the fact that it's ranked at 171st with it being an XL, it feels like there are so many other options, such as a Cresselia, which ranks out at 2nd and is also a Psychic type Pokemon. I just feel like Uxie is just not in the picture. Now, if you're curious as to why that's possible, it actually has nothing to do with its stats. Its stats are designed to perform pretty well on the PvP side. It literally comes down to the moveset. It did not get a good moveset for PvP, unfortunately, despite the fact that the stats are there for this Pokemon. So instead of Niantic constantly re-releasing Pokemon, and in this particular case, releasing a new shiny, I would love to see them release new moves. And I'm not even necessarily saying just exclusive moves, but instead just a new move when a Pokemon ends up coming back out, just to kind of expand the move pool, potentially keep it up to date. Because when you have a Pokemon come out years ago and you never update the moveset, things change, and these Pokemon that could compete at one point in time can no longer compete now. So adding on a new move could be something fun, and if you want to do it exclusive just to make it a money grab thing, then by all means go for it. But just constantly re-releasing these Pokemon seems like a bit of wasted potential as far as I'm concerned. So overall, as far as these Pokemon, in my opinion, I don't think that any of them are worth investing into, but of course, make sure that you go around, raid, and coordinate to where you can get one of them. If you are trying to get the shinies, that would be kind of a nice thing to kind of go for. Should be a lot of fun to shiny hunt in the different regions for that, where you're getting invited into remote raids, but I'm not going to recommend investing in these Pokemon. By all means, chase it for the trophy though. Don't unlock a secondary charge move, not good on PvP. Azelf is okay on the raid side, but I think that there are way better investments. But of course, I would love to know what you think about the Lake Trio in the comment section below. Which one is your favorite? Which one are you going for? Definitely let me know why in the comment section below. I also want to give a huge shout out to the supporters over at Patreon. We have an exclusive Discord server for the patrons only. We coordinate for raids, we talk Pokemon Go, we stay up to date on anything and everything. So if you're interested in that and supporting the channel, make sure to check out the Patreon link in the description below, and I will see you next time.